to Living the Public Affairs Mission, public affairs talk sponsored by the Office of Public Affairs Support. I'll be just doing a brief introduction of our guests today, all of whom share two special awards that they received on campus. The first is the Excellence in Community Engagement Award given to faculty and staff who lead efforts to promote initiatives, improve their community. And the Board of Governors Excellence in Public Affairs Award that's given to faculty and staff for their public affairs work at the university. Public affairs is our mission at Missouri State, and we understand it through the lens of community engagement, cultural competence, and ethical leadership. And just a fun fact for today, annually, the Missouri State provides nearly 500,000 hours of service to the community from faculty, staff, and students. And so these are just a few of the outstanding people who are part of that service. My name is Carrie Franklin. I'm a professor in the Department of English since 2006, and I'm currently the Associate Provost for Public Affairs and Assessment since 2020. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And I want to thank you, audience, for taking the time to listen and for your interest in the panel topic today about living the public affairs, and to thank the people in front of us today. And thank you to the Office of Public Affairs Support for organizing this. So just a little feedback for you, or a little guidance as we go through this. Please don't save your questions for the end. As you come into the virtual room, post a quick question via the Q&A box. I'll be periodically pausing and taking audience questions from the Q&A feature. And I'd like to ask for your permission to share your name in that question as well. Panelists, we're going to do a few warm-up questions, and we'll talk about living the public affairs mission, and then each will take 5 minutes to share their projects with you. And listeners and panelists will ask questions among each other. So really feel free, as you have a question or as you hear something that's intriguing to you, take a moment and put it in the Q&A. As I mentioned, our topic today is living the public affairs. We have, and if you'll wave to, please, Dr. Judith Martinez, an assistant professor in the Department of Modern and Classical Languages. Shanna Milwenny, a digital archivist at Missouri State University Archives, a digital archivist at Missouri State University Libraries. Dr. Gary Mines, an associate professor in the chemistry department. Dr. Matthew Pearson, an associate professor in the cooperative engineering program at Missouri State. Karen Saxon, a senior instructor in the criminology department. And Dr. Suzanne Walker Pacheco, a professor in sociology and anthropology. And I'm so honored to welcome you today, and also to really congratulate all of you for the awards that you won this year and for the amazing work that you've done. And so we'll start out with, what's the public affairs mean to you? And what I mean by that, here I'll frame this a little bit differently, is what was the thing that happened when you realized that the work that you were doing was public affairs?
I think for me, it was just the realization that my interaction with the community that I thought was just a part of my own personal community was like the university's community and the city's community, and it all tied together.
And I realized the university was already supporting what I was doing, the administration was, but even more so because it was so aligned with the public affairs mission.
Really, for me, the public affairs mission is what made me want to work here. You know, the idea that I could actually earn a paycheck and do paid work in an institution or in a place that would acknowledge the importance of my volunteer work to me was just really compelling and really lovely. And that really means so much to me, and why MSU means a lot to me.
I think for me, it was also seeing my students being able to transform what they were learning in the classroom into practice and transformation in the community for them and for the community.
For my work with the archives, it already kind of tied into what we do with outreach for archiving, anything related to the history of the Ozarks. And then I realized that part of my personal life, tied into that as well, and things that I was already doing.
Yeah, I would just echo what the others have said. I was doing some volunteer work already, and it was nice to sort of see that, oh, okay, this is university mission, and things that I find important to do would be valued across the board.
It's interesting that you saw, the trend was that you were doing it, and then you also recognized that the university acknowledged that and supported that. Do you think that made you do more than what you would have done just if you were doing this solitarily?
It certainly makes me capable of doing more. And the flexibility of a teaching position too was really interesting to me for that reason, that I could keep going into the jail on Thursdays and I wasn't going to have to be behind a desk on a Thursday. So, you know, just those types of attributes of working here, even outside of the public affairs mission, that's just a bonus. But even those other attributes that really make even more engagement in the community possible has just been such a blessing in my own life. But knowing too that my values are in line with the institution's values, and that I am encouraged to connect and engage and bring my students with me even is just wonderful.
I don't think I was doing anything, or I've been doing anything any different necessarily than I would have been doing, but the public affairs mission gives sort of a framework for presenting it and tying it into the university, and a framework for my students in particular as well.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that I would do that. It's motivated me to do any more. Volunteering is sort of in my blood, I think, a little bit. But what I appreciate is that it is appreciated, that the work, the things, the activities that I've done is valued and wouldn't go unappreciated.
Do you feel like you have made an impact on your students? Can you talk about maybe an example from your students, or based on your leadership for public affairs?
Yes, I have the faces of my students here because when I developed first a class for to teach Latinx poetry, mainly written by immigrants, and then COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, my students were reading this that was really speaking to their hearts and things about different perspectives and different realities for their people. And then when COVID hit, we all kind of had this idea of what is it that we can do for the community. And we all decided on a project where they were going to start working with the community and tutor the children of immigrant families who were in need of any extra academic support. And we did this via Zoom. So my students in a way were able to connect what they were learning in the classroom and then living in standing up and stepping up to help these families, these children who were being left behind because they didn't, their parents didn't speak the language, or they were struggling a little bit more than usual because everything went online. And so they were really impacted by, not only by literature, like it would have been in a regular classroom or in a regular class in the past, but now with what they were seeing exacerbated gaps of differences. And I think they felt, they understood their privilege, and they also understood their ability and their superpower to step up and help when they're in a time of need. So, when they wrote the reflections and journals and everything, it was beyond rewarding for them.
I love that line. They found their superpower, so they could step up.
Right.
There is a question, and I'm going to give you this question, and then I'm going to ask you to talk about what is the Public Affairs Project. You do so much more than one project, all of you. And so I will ask you to kind of be a little bit more concrete and kind of help us learn about one thing that you're working on. But for anyone, thank you, Julia, for the question. For anyone who is maybe moving to a new city and looking to get involved, what advice do you have? Maybe they're new faculty, maybe they're new students, new staff. What advice would you have, Matt?
I would play to your strengths. If you have already got some volunteering experience, there's a good chance that there's something like that in a new community. It can be pretty stressful. Bring a friend. That's always good. Like somebody that you can sort of at least make fun of the other people that you're with, secretly, of course. But that would be a couple of ideas. I'm sure there's some more better ideas.
I think schools and churches always have a place for volunteering, and they, people would always go there to look for support. So if you're looking to connect and make yourself useful, I always would go to a school or church.
I would suggest thinking too about maybe gaps in your own experiences. How could you use your volunteer work to help you connect with people that aren't like you, people that you've never met before, especially when we think about the pillar of cultural competency and that idea of wanting to develop or use this work to help develop something in ourselves while also giving to others. I think that's a place to start. What would I like to learn? What would I like to grow or cultivate in myself? That can be a great motivation that can help you connect to a specific project.
I feel like I need to give a plug. We have a website on campus for volunteer opportunities, Give Pulse, I think student organizations, and finding service learning courses for students too, because many of you embed that within your teaching. And so finding those classes too. So here's the question. What's the project that you feel defines your public affairs work, defines who you are as a citizen scholar? And I would really like for you to share that with the audience today. And so we're going to start off with Dr. Martinez. And so, like I said earlier, if you have questions as Dr. Martinez is taking, about 4 to 5 minutes to talk about her work, ask those questions, panelists, ask the questions in the Q&A, and really looking forward. So Dr. Martinez, what is the project that really kind of showcases or epitomizes your work in public affairs?
I think the main thing is working with the Hispanic communities with my students. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. It's one thing to be reading literature and falling in love with poetry and falling in love with, what the authors wrote and understanding how literature is still relevant now. And then going into the community and seeing these perspectives with real people, with people that they know, understanding and making these connections with the book and what I'm learning in class and the character of a novel or the writer of a poetry of a poem with somebody that they met. I think when I have had these intercultural dialogues with the community, then I can see this click on my students. And I think this is one of the things, and then when they feel that they can learn from them and also give to them, I think that's when we make that connection, because it's very humbling when they are knowing and understanding that they can also learn, because, volunteering, it's a lot of giving. But I think my students also learn from the Hispanic community a lot of things, and they feel that they grow and they feel that, I'm not only, I feel like I'm being more multicultural now or more bicultural. And I think that growth, it's what they appreciate a lot. And beyond giving, they're receiving as well. And I think we miss that. Sometimes we think a lot about outreach and giving and getting out of ourselves, and that's great. But I think also the nurturing piece that we receive when we give and the growing, I think that's key. And I think that's one thing. I mean, I can talk about another project that I just thought about, Carrie, because recently I started working with a group of amazing people on this new grant with the Coders Project, and that kind of this is about going into the communities and trying to teach teachers or working with the teachers to integrate how they teach their students, with the science and also the arts. And to me, it's given me a new, like a revival, because I'm going again to the communities. We're working with rural communities. We're working with kids who need help, who otherwise wouldn't have access to technology or to an integrative approach to teaching. And I think this is giving me again a different vision on why we have this mission and why we're here, and collaborating with other colleagues from different areas, coming together, design something so we can give something, but at the same time, every time we go to the schools, we are receiving from those kids, because we're thinking, okay, this is the future, this is the next generation, this is how we should be thinking. Right now we all realize that without technology we're really going to be set backwards, you know. So then I think we're working on this very innovative project, and I feel very privileged that I think that's right now, that's what I'm taking, how I'm feeding myself as a public affairs mission. And I think it's not just, you know, something that it's my project, but I see it as a shared project with other colleagues, but also with the community and also with teachers. And I feel that if we work with teachers, we're really trying to make this, you're really going to make a change in the society because we're working with educators.
You know, Dr. Martinez, you said you get as much as you're giving, and you guys are all doing, you're giving a lot, you're putting out a lot. Does that resonate with you? Does it feel like you're giving, or how's it feeling like the getting back part? What are you getting back? It sounds like, Dr. Martinez, like you're getting back like some spark and inspiration, some connection with colleagues, and impacting kids and teachers in the community. What about for the rest of you?
I think with the things I've been working on, getting outside of my comfort zone, and I think that's probably a lot of what you're doing with your students, Dr. Martinez, is your students may feel like they understand, you know, initially already, or know about the groups of people they're going to work with, but until they're actually doing it and putting themselves out there, that's a hard thing to truly understand until you're there.
Once students step in and start becoming really engaged with the community, with whomever it is in whatever role, sometimes a teaching sort of role, and they, you know, are learning more about projects and taking action, I think they sort of take ownership in a way of a topic. They take it to heart, and it becomes a meaningful experience, and it ends up enhancing their entire undergraduate experience later on. So some of, you know, those kinds of things, had a lot of comments down the line about not only the experience, but also some of the skills they're taking with them into the future to apply to other areas as well.
I get so much satisfaction out of doing these that I actually feel a little dirty getting an award, and I just a little bit until I still applied, you know, but there's such a sense of accomplishment when you are doing the right thing and you're with the community and they're supporting you, that, you know, a tangible thing is hard to evaluate, you know, but anyway, I feel like I'm rambling.
You're not at all. Anyone else feel that way? Like, did you feel shy about getting an award?
Yeah, I certainly did. When I talk a little bit, I'll discuss that I do science outreach. So I deal with a lot of K through 12 public school students. And, you know, a lot of the satisfaction is personal, and that's, you know, it's fun to do. But when I've done a bunch of demos for kids and they walk out of the room and this, oh, that was awesome. You know, it's like just that little moment, you know, little connection that can be so valuable. Is just, I mean, that makes it all worth it at the end of the day, honestly.
Well, while I have you here, Dr. Mites, you're in the full screen. Can you talk with us
sure.
about the project that really, you know, speaks to you regarding the public affairs mission?
Yeah. So science education is sort of my community service passion, and so what I do as part of that, and have done for the past several years, is had students come in to the chemistry department, or I go out, just pre-COVID, go out to various schools, and I do fun demonstrations. And, you know, I'm a chemist, so we blow things up and light things on fire. And so it's, you know, exciting for the young students. But, you know, there's evidence in the literature, science education literature, that all that's needed is a wow moment. Not all, but the wow moment that students can experience can really be inspirational and powerful to them. And, you know, it's almost become a cliche that the world needs better science literacy and better appreciation for science these days. And I take that very seriously personally. And so any little thing that I can do in the community, down to young kids, to just have them see that science is fun and it's powerful and it's important, and we do good things with science, and we discuss how it works and the power of the scientific method and things like that, just is its own reward. And so what I've done, again, just to reiterate, is, we'll go to the Phelps Center for Gifted Education and bring those students over here and go out to other K through 12 schools, even have schools from outside the Springfield area to bring their students in and show them, fun demonstrations, but also give a tour of the departments, discuss career options in science so that they can, even just plant that seed in the back of their mind can be tremendously important to get them to think about that. And so the promoting science education, that's fundamentally, my passion in this area.
So Dr. Mines, don't you have a nickname?
Yeah, given by one of my letter writers. He claims that I'm the Bill Nye of the Springfield area. I would dispute that. That's a real big statement. But I would say even to be in that conversation is fun and really cool. Just, he's been so inspirational. This is Bill Nye for how many generations of students. Even just to have that small comparison in my local community that was pretty cool. I dispute it, but hey, I'll take it also.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That was really nice. Panelists, any kind of response or anything that Dr. Mines mentioned that resonates with you? And don't forget, attendees, just drop any kind of question or comment in the Q&A too. We'd really like for you to be involved.
It's just so important with science with anything, but particular science, to make it accessible for people. So those kids, they're not going to forget that. So that's huge.
Yeah, I think we all in some way can get bogged down in the technical aspect of what we do, but everybody can appreciate, blowing something up, right? To have it be this exciting moment to show that as technical as science can be, that it can also be fun and interesting, even if you don't necessarily understand all the details. So just that moment can be, I think, such an important thing.
One of the questions that we had was, what's one of the coolest experiments that kids love? Is it related to blowing things up? And how do you blow the things up?
Safely. That's number one, and do it safely. The lighting stuff on fire is always fun. So I'll give a couple of examples. There's a phenomenon called a whoosh bottle, where you literally it's a giant water bottle and you put a tiny bit of just rubbing alcohol and then drop a match in it, and it makes this sound. That's really, when you do it in a room full of kids and their eyes bug out, and oh man, so they love that. But honestly, the thing that I think gets the biggest reaction is liquid nitrogen. It just, it's something that they likely don't have any experience with. And so I can bring in my special gloves and face shield and goggles, and I can put stuff, dunk it in liquid nitrogen, and show under these extreme conditions, all of a sudden, a rubber hose or a banana or a flower, all of a sudden reacts differently. And so I do this, I call it a magic trick, science magic trick, where I hammer a nail into a board with a banana by dunking it and soaking it in liquid nitrogen so it becomes hard as a rock. And that is a winner across the board.
Thank you. Hey, I have Suzanne right here. Suzanne, would you tell us a little bit about your public affairs journey and the work that you've done?
So sure, it kind of goes back quite a way, but the general categories would be engaging students with the community, providing some sort of education for community members, and now the biggest project is civic engagement with students. A long history of in the past of reading program with Latino kids, immigrants mostly from Mexico, from central Mexico, and that was for about 9 years actually, and involved lots of students with that, and then also had students engaged with some families in their homes to read with the kids and, you know, help them with their homework or whatever. And then also frequently, get into a relationship with the whole family, and especially with the mothers who sometimes were, didn't have transportation, might have been, in the home frequently and had language barriers. So making those connections were really special both for the families and the students. And and that ended up leading into more work actually with Latino community and in terms of health related research, diabetes and obesity prevention program. And so I did that work for several years actually. And students were involved in all aspects of that as well. And so that was really rewarding for them and enhanced their whole educational experience. And then obviously those cross-cultural connections, and I feel like sometimes when you do make connections with people that are from different backgrounds, then you get those connections seem even stronger than people that that you see around you, that you're that you're more used to being around. I've been involved with a number of community kinds of things with the library, our wonderful library system. And so that's been, again, involving students in all aspects of that, and students giving workshops. So they're in an educational role, and they tend to like to teach what they've learned, and it gives them a lot of confidence. So that's important. And then most recently, students have sort of helped me fulfill a dream, really, and built with a group of students this nonpartisan voter education initiative on campus. Pause to the polls. Here's a mask or logo. Anyway, and we were just tabling today, but we've done a lot of tabling, classroom presentations, designing, coming up with curriculum for GEP classes, and it's really multifaceted. We've produced a couple of videos, so there's a lot of growth yet to undertake, and it's kind of all consuming. But the students, again, kind of especially the ones that helped build the project, are just so they're so excited about it, and our successes are especially especially sweet because we've built this together. So we just went to Jeff City a few weeks ago and spoke with several of us, spoke with legislators about new voter ID laws and things like that, and made our voices heard, but also established relationships with these legislators, which is so important. So the students are ending up getting skills that I hadn't even really thought necessarily early on that they would get, but some of them are moving on into jobs and in graduate schools, and looking back and realizing, oh, I learned to do this and this, and write a proposal, and do these presentations and outreach. So that's been incredibly rewarding for me to watch and engage with them. So, and then more and more as the years have gone on, both in my primates class and now a class that I teach called Action Anthropology, students do action-oriented projects. So we find ways to not only investigate issues, but what can we do about them in any way, raising awareness, etc. So students have come up with all kinds of amazing ways to take action. So it's just seeing the sort of the tentacles going out, from them, and the numbers of people that they have, influenced or taught about their issues. It's been again just amazing. It's been an amazing experience for me.
Dr. Walker Pacheco, did you ever imagine when you were working on your PhD that you would be teaching a course like Action Anthropology? Is that what you had envisioned?
Yeah, certainly not. I did think certainly potentially going into something like, conservation and having, students do something maybe with conservation, but civic engagement kind of leads the way to everything. Obviously, it branches out into everything is votable at some level. So, but no, I was definitely much more focused than that on primates and primate conservation. So, and I didn't know I'd get more so into the cultural realm actually as well.
You said something about the bonds that you make with people outside of your discipline can sometimes be stronger. And it made me think about what Dr. Martinez said too. You know, it sounded like some of her interdisciplinary bonds are have really brought some joy to her as well.
So, yeah, and more and cross culturally in particular as well. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And Shannon, the digital archivist at Missouri State Libraries, can you tell us a little bit about what's inspired you and what's the project, what's your passion project for public affairs? And also, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So I've kind of got two projects. The first one is more tied into my job at Missouri State, where I work in the Special Collections and Archives unit in the in Meyer Library with the Missouri State University Library. So we, I think I'm the only non-faculty member here. I don't teach classes specifically, but we do have classes that come in, and we do some education on primary sources and evaluating your information sources, and just learning about history in general, and learning about the importance of learning about other people's history too. So that tied into, I got involved with the Christian County Museum and Historical Society. I've been doing that for about 10 years now. It's an entirely volunteer run organization down there in Ozark. And I served as secretary for 5 years, and I'm now been president since 2019. And just the biggest and most important efforts of the organization, we preserve county history. So that can involve museum artifacts, archival documents, photographs, oral history interviews, books, just kind of memories in general. And then engaging the community too. So we give tours and presentations to school groups and civic organizations. We talk to community members at county events, set up exhibits, and help researchers with their questions. And, you know, of course, use social media to share information. But just generally making folks aware of county history and their own history, as well as other people's history, and just kind of engaging with that and connecting to history. And there's a lot of new, I would say some immigrants, but also, you know, just people moving from other states to the area, and people who don't necessarily know yet the history of the county, and being able to connect that way is really, really cool and really important. I've also been involved with the Connecting Grounds, a local organization here that focuses on caring for and advocating for the unsheltered community in Springfield. So that I just got involved with just by becoming aware of what was going on. And I think, again, social media tying into a lot of things. I believe I saw some of the videos that they had put out, and that's how we learned about what they were doing and the importance of what they were doing. My volunteer work has involved making like sack lunches just to be handed out to those in need. And now I've been working together with a group at the library to put some of those together. Also helping out at their outreach center, which is up on Chestnut Expressway, where they offer all kinds of things like clothing and food and supplies, but also things like haircuts and medical care, laundry, assistance in navigating social services and supports. It's really amazing what all they can do up there. We've also got on cold weather street outreach nights, both helping transport folks to shelters when temperatures are in like frostbite territory, or getting food and supplies and some hot coffee and information like the weather forecast to folks who are staying out in the elements. I'm still getting my bearings there a bit on just how large and complicated an issue that is, and how it relates to so many other issues. And I bet a lot of the professors here work with some of these things like affordable housing, cost of medical care, addiction treatment services, incarceration, mental health, disability, veteran services, foster care and family services, just trauma in general, and just how much help is needed, whether it's financial or just, you know, boots on the ground help, or advocating and getting the word out about the issues. So I've really appreciated the support and the ability to be able to work with both of these organizations while working at MSU.
Shannon, you've really done some amazing things. There's a natural segue there to Karen Saxon and criminology, but I have to stop and answer just a couple of questions, or have you answer them. I think the first one is for Dr. Walker Pacheco. What is your biggest piece of advice to get someone who is a non-voter to become a voter?
Well, just simply asking them what issues they care about. And this is actually one of the exercises in the GEP curriculum, is about making voting relatable to each individual. And once they say whatever, sustainability or, no CAFOs or, just about whatever the issue is, it will in some place somewhere, it has been on the ballot somewhere, almost certainly. And LGBTQ, issues and gender identity and, pushback from more conservative organizations or whatever, anything along those lines. And so once, they see that, especially make that connection, themselves, preferably like, oh, here it is, right here on this ballot. And they start realizing that, who they vote for actually makes a difference. And not only issues, but who they're voting for, because there's so much going on in the Missouri, in our state, for example, in all states, in the legislature that we are not voting on, but our elected officials are voting on. And some of that, when you can look at the list of these hundreds and hundreds of bills that they're proposing, most of us look at them and we'd be pretty horrified. And I think your average person on the street would be horrified at a lot of them as well. So, just even showing somebody the text of one of these bills sometimes might do it. But again, making it relatable, making it personal to someone.
Thank you. I saw some head nods from Karen and Gary. Do you have anything else to add to that? Your biggest piece of advice to get someone who's a non-voter to become a voter? Would you add anything?
I would add another question for Walker or Dr. Walker Pacheco. Is that okay?
Great. Yes.
Well, as you were speaking, I was wanting to ask, and I pardon me in advance if I don't articulate this well, but as a teacher, I struggle sometimes with criminal justice being so politicized and also with, I think, a lot of my students being very in one polar camp or the other. They either come to criminal justice from a very one direction or very much the other direction. And so I, as a teacher, have to make sure to not come off as being biased one way or the other. But I also think about my days in college and how those were the years when I was really sparked to become a political person and to have an investment and make an investment in our democracy. And I want to be that kind of teacher, but it's so hard to find that balance between the fear of being the teacher who dared to share her own opinion about something and or try to indoctrinate, if you will, or not, but also wanting to help students find that inspiration to become more involved. Do you have any, A, does my question make sense, and B, do you have any advice for teachers when it comes to that issue?
Right, so that's definitely a valid concern. And coming from the discipline that I come from, anthropology, there's not a lot of pushback from students, to be honest. And I try not to necessarily, state an opinion certainly not in a partisan way. I never talk about partisan politics, but I do bring up issues. And those issues a lot of them are partisan issues, unfortunately, and a lot of them shouldn't be partisan issues. But I guess sometimes just presenting them with, like, here's the text of this bill, or here's a topic, maybe two people with opposing viewpoints or something even could check out that topic together to try to look up what are the facts, what are websites, or what are valid sources that provide accurate information, or they can look up that information. So sometimes the actual information speaks for itself. And teaching them, I guess, how to avoid either bias or certainly recognizing it when they see it. But it is a bit of a fine line, especially in something like criminal justice, and where you have some people, putting quotes around structural racism, and it's sort of like, well, let's take a look at some actual data. So, but that's tough, I guess. Sometimes facts don't always work necessary to convince somebody, I know that. But yet another thing that does seem to work well, and in fact, stay tuned, I think, for the Public Affairs Conference in the fall, for working on a panel about some of these kinds of issues, actually, in some ways that you're talking about. But the narrative kind of approach and shared experience, exposing people to other individuals who have a whole different set of experiences, because it's exposure that has turned people around, there's changed views. So not being told what to think, but to allow, for them to form their own opinions based on their personal experience and exposure to more, other people's experiences.
I think there's a whole session right there, right? Like a whole, well, more than an afternoon, obviously, for us to talk about that. I mean,
Yeah.
such a great topic. And Gary, I'm sure you could join in on that conversation as well. There is another comment though I wanted to share with you. Thank you, Dr. Walker Pacheco. Kay, thank you for the question. This person mentioned you've discussed a wonderful variety of public affairs projects. How do you think Missouri State University's commitment to public affairs has changed the city of Springfield? Do you see evidence of stronger town-gown relationships as a result of this mission? Do you think Missouri State's commitment to public affairs has changed the city of Springfield? And do you see evidence of stronger town-gown relationships as a result of the public affairs mission?
I have personally, and I'll talk about that more in my talk, but of course, so we're downtown and we've gotten a lot of community people to come out and just do it. Our projects as a goof almost. It's a good time. So I think that those are long-lasting relationships.
So we'll hold on. If anyone else has anything to add, please do so, or we can also wait and talk about that a little bit more, Matt, when you present.
Just briefly, the Public Affairs Conference. So that's been kind of a roaring success, and I know that a lot of people in the community are aware of it, and there's a huge turnout, and I think growing turnout. So that's an important aspect.
And that will be 3 days in the fall. But also that actually leads to another question that we have here. Are there any public affairs events that the panel is putting on that we can go and volunteer at? And one, for example, Suzanne, you've got Pause to the Polls. That's a group, but can you each just take a moment and answer that? What's a panel? What's an event project that we can go and volunteer at?
I'll jump in. Is it in March? Now I can't remember the date. The Ozark Science and Engineering Fair is it's a science fair. It's a science fair for K through 12 students in the Springfield area, and they always need volunteers to help, not chaperone, but just sort of help direct kids and set up poster boards and things like that. So that's something. I know one of the teachers at Central High who's involved in that. I'd happily provide a website or something for that if anybody is interested, but I know that's one specific science-related opportunity to volunteer and to help the community.
Thank you.
I would say follow us on Instagram. We're starting a social media contest actually, so we'll be giving away a bit of swag and hopefully collecting some freebies, some goodies from community people in the community, businesses in the community, make free dinners, movie passes, that sort of thing. So people can follow us on Instagram, but also learn a little bit because we'll post educational type things sometimes, and that's sort of just building. So that's our social media is we're working on it, and volunteering to vote. This answers sort of two questions. So volunteering to help at elections, they desperately need poll workers. And so that would be a huge contribution right there.
The Hand in Hand Multicultural Center. Sorry, Shannon. It's Hand in Hand Multicultural Center on Hovey Street. They're always working with immigrant families, primarily with Latinx community, but with anybody. And they're always looking for volunteers. So that's another place to reach out.
The Christian County Museum is always looking for volunteers for even just keeping the museum open for like a day or an afternoon or something. If you have interest in history, or if you have any specific area of interest, there's a lot of exhibits on different topics that we could certainly use help with. And then the Connecting Grounds is always looking for volunteers as well, whether it's for helping make lunches, helping with meals that they do at the Veterans Coming Home Center, or doing their street outreach or helping sort donations. I know they have a big need for anyone with medical expertise to help with that area of outreach, or who can offer to do like haircuts and things like that.
Shannon, Karen?
The Missouri Department of Probation and Parole operates a restorative justice, community justice board. It's just a once a month commitment. It allows basically, I would call it kind of community probation. People who are in a diversion program come into our program and they spend a year with us, and we support them as they go through the program requirements. So if you have an interest in helping that population of people and learning more about community-based supervision and being a part of criminal justice reform, that's a really easy way to do it.
Thank you. Matt?
Oh, well, so the Springfield, City of Springfield Adopt a Stream, Adopt a Road program has got hundreds of different locations. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. We don't have one scheduled, but we do 3 a year on our stretch. And so we'll have one coming up in April, late April, probably early May. So I just can't tell you when it is. We want everybody to come out and pick up trash.
All right. You know how to have a good time. It all helps. It all helps. So I'm going to introduce Kieran and then Matt, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that last question from Matt. But earlier, Shannon, you'd mentioned something about some new things that you'd learned from the Connecting Grounds related to affordable housing and some issues that have, come up. And Suzanne, you've talked about issues in the community as well. And Karen, I think my hunch is you're going to talk about some of the work that you do that kind of informs some of those issues. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's your Living the Public Affairs project?
Sure, definitely an overlap in populations there. A lot of the people I work with are people Shannon probably meets and works with as well. So definitely some connections. I have been a volunteer in prisons, jails, or probation since I was 23. Long before I started studying criminology, I've always had a real sense that it was important that community members be parts of these systems and these institutions as a symbol of oversight and interconnection, but also to make sure that we don't really detach completely from the people who are walking through these systems, if you will. The work that I'll talk about today, I associate with the public affairs mission in MSU just because it's the only work I do that I can bring students into. And that's my class at the jail. I've had the ability to bring a few students over the years into that class to volunteer for a semester with me. And that's been really rewarding for me, for sure, but I think for them as well. Basically, this is a class that caters only to women in the Greene County Jail. My reason for starting that class was a recognition that, we understand from the research that women often take different pathways into crime than men do. They also are very neglected in the system when it comes to programming and services because so much attention is placed on designing services like that for men because men simply are the dominant population in that system. So it was important to me after working a lot of years with men in the system to try to shift into working with women. And I was especially interested in what we call the victim offender overlap and the ways that trauma and relationship violence influence or impact women in the criminal justice system. I don't think I've ever met a woman in the criminal justice system that doesn't have some kind of experience with abuse or trauma, whether that be in her childhood or as an adult or all of it. And I also I don't think I've ever met a woman in the system that can't connect her criminal offending to a relationship that she's in, whether that's with a family member or with a romantic partner. So what I do in this class is spend an hour with these women, whoever wants to come down to the class, and we just talk about various topics related to relationship abuse, trauma, and violence. I try to make sure that that class embeds some information for these women. A lot of these women, even though they live lives full of trauma and abuse, don't know how to recognize it. Don't know how to recognize it as something that shouldn't be happening to them. So often just kind of domestic violence 101 is what we cover in this class. One of the most important things I do in that class is shove a list of community resources in the hands of all of those women to make sure they have an awareness, at least, of resources that are available to them when they leave the jail. But I also try to embed some kind of practical skill in each lesson as well. Some things that come to mind are, I have a lesson on nonviolent communication and connecting emotions to needs, to strategies or behaviors. I have a lesson on conflict styles and how trauma and abuse affects conflict and communication styles. Just talk a lot about emotion, the role of grief in recovery from abuse. So not a set curriculum, because that's not how jails work, but I just try to create lessons around kind of what's ever on my heart that week, or whatever I see as a need in the women who have been coming to the class. Always make sure they have some handouts to take with them to share with other women, or just to keep looking at themselves. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be able to bring a few students into this class with me. Takes a lot to be a jail volunteer. You've got to do an application and go to a training, and it can take a long time. So typically it takes about a semester to get them set up, and then they can volunteer for a semester. So it's usually a year-long process, which is why I don't do it very often with students. But when there's a student I know I can trust who would really benefit from that experience, I'm really happy to bring them in. And one thing I really like about bringing students into that work is when it comes to teaching criminal justice, most of our students want to work in criminal justice, and not all of them will, of course. But a lot of their motivations for wanting to work in the system are really inspiring and really beautiful. They really want to help people. And I like to give them I don't want to present myself as a role model, but as some kind of model of, you can do that without being paid for it. And you can do that as a volunteer. There are other ways to operate within a system. There are other ways to change a system. There are other ways to help people besides just being a paid professional in one of these systems. And so that's something that this class also, I think, allows me to do, is demonstrate to students that while we all want them to be thinking about their careers, they can also be thinking about their lives and their volunteer work. And sometimes there are ways to connect the two, as we have all been talking about, being fortunate enough to be able to do. But often in people's lives, those things are separate, and that's okay. And so I like to be able to show them that they can volunteer in these systems as well.
Karen, thank you so much. And it was inspiring to hear about your teaching and how you connect that with your teaching. Dr. Pearson's going to be talking about, in addition to the work that he does with public affairs, with his teaching and his research and his service, he won the award along with Shannon for community engagement outside the community. So, Dr. Pearson.
Well, I got special permission to show pictures. Basically, I'm the ringleader, so I couldn't really be here without acknowledging everybody that helped. And so I'm going to talk about a stream cleanup project. We've adopted a stream, and I'm going to talk about K6 outreach, educational outreach that we have at the engineering building downtown in Springfield at our cooperative engineering program. So I set some timers. I hope the slides will advance on time. It's said to advance on a click, and it's not going now, so I must have broken it. Let's try again. Okay, so basically for the K6, we are bringing people to engineering labs, and we're getting professional engineers to come and do sort of shock and awe science experiments to try to get somebody's attention and keep it. Through the hard years of like middle school, when sometimes it's hard to see that on the other side of this math that you're learning is like a tangible science outcome that you can use to like better the world. And so we bring professional engineers, we bring student engineers, and they run demos of different activities. So Gary likes to blow things up. I like to smash things. We've got geologists that are coming. And I think we get something like So I'm going faster now. I don't want to run out of time.
You're good. You're really good.
So here we're on this picture. 3M brings a bunch of people. So they've got their own room, and the students put on PPE and they mix things together to make epoxies. And we usually get about 200 people there. We've had buses that have showed up. We had a collaboration where we brought middle school women to learn about engineering from around Southeast Missouri. And getting back to something that Gary said, it's really hard to not be completely present in the moment when kids are just so completely connected to what you're doing. And it's really rewarding to do that. So we have this every year. I canceled it this year because of the Omicron variant. We probably would have been fine. Typically, it happens in the middle to the end of February. And we usually have about 20 to 30 people there. This is one of our groups of girls that came, and they built a bridge and were able to sort of walk across it and that sort of thing. The next project I want to talk about is an Adopt a Stream project. So part of the requirements for us getting funding from the university for different activities for our student chapter is some type of volunteering. And so we started to clean up Jordan Creek downtown, which is right next to our building. It actually goes under our building in 2014. And it worked so well. It was so easy to do this volunteering activity that we adopted it because we were already doing 2 cleanups a year. And so it was really easy to do the 3rd cleanup a year, which is what's required. And so basically the section is from Grant Street to Fort Street. And this is the old BNSF Railway area. It's a brownfield site and it's heavily camped. So I'm read between the lines when I say camping. So there's an incredible amount of trash, and the people that are camping there, they're not paying for trash collection service. In addition to that, all of the trash from downtown is basically littered on the street, impervious surface areas, not going to trap trash, so it ends up in the creek. And so there are these places where you can, in one small, like 6-foot area, pick up a whole bag full of plastic bottles. All the bottles are collected in an area. So while we're also making the community better and connecting with the community, we're also learning about how to remove trash from creeks, from water. This is one of the engineering best management practices that are put into place in urban environments, is how do we treat the water quality at the location of the water impairment, and then so that we don't have to treat it in, say, Table Rock Lake. So we've had local community people come out. We've had professional engineers come out. We've had a lot of help from the living learning community. So once a year, the freshmen come out and build some or clean up some trash. We've had homeless folks come out and help. Almost always we get a thank you from people that are camping in the area. And it's an area of town that could be beautiful, and it will be beautiful soon, but all of that is a part of the process. And I'm glad that we're able to be a part of it as a member of the local community and as a member of the MSU community. So I got some stats here. This is my last slide though. So I guess I'm guessing that we have something like 1,800 bags of trash picked up since 2013. So that's all I had to talk about. I hope I can stop sharing my screen now.
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you, Matthew. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for all the amazing work that you're doing. I feel honored to be in a virtual room with you and to be able to highlight your work. So thank you so much for coming today. Reach out, attendees, to any of these people, and I know that they would appreciate hearing from you. And I think we should get together and talk again. So thanks so much, and thanks for coming today. Have a good day.